After my caulking compound coverage has dried, you can see what I've got left. So you can see that I've still got a few air bubbles and things in there, which I think I'm going to be able to cover with the next layer, which is going to be the grout. So I'm just going to push these pieces aside. For grout, we've been experimenting with lots of things, and we've only had a short experiment with this, but we think this is going to work. So I have purchased some coloured flexible grout. It comes in a bunch of kind of earthy colours. You could go white if you wanted just basically to mirror this and do more with your paint over the top. But I've gone for this Havana colour. Now in Australia this is available at Bunnings. I think it was about like $12 for 1.5 kilos, which will be tons. In terms of other things, I'm going to grab myself a little mixing bowl. I've got another one of those little plastic card things that I'm going to kind of flex on. I've also got a cheap paintbrush that I'm going to have a bit of an experiment with. And of course I have some water in my trusty glass there. So the idea is I'm going to come along and I'm going to mix some grout out. Now of course you at home are going to follow the instructions. I'm going to just do it kind of a bit to sight. And again, like every step in this, I'm going to put a pair of gloves on because I just don't like washing all the gunk off my hands. So on the packet, it basically gives you directions about how much powder to put into how much water. But its final kind of thing is mix it until it's a kind of toothpaste-like consistency. So that's how I'm going to mix it. I'm basically going to aim for toothpaste. I'm going to fast forward this so you can watch it happen, but don't have to watch it happen. Okay, so you can see the texture I've got there. It's kind of runny. I want mine just a little bit stiffer than that, so I'm going to add a fraction more, but not too much, powder. Okay, happy with that. Now you've seen this process before. Basically going to come along, slap some mix on, and then just smooth it out using my piece of plastic. Now I am on the lookout here for any air bubbles and things that are appearing in the surface. I want to make sure that I've got them covered. Now at this stage here, just running my edge along just to make sure I'm minimizing how much I've got hanging over the edge. Because that will affect when we're locking them together. If I've got too much stuff hanging over the edge, it just means I've got to do some maintenance on it at the end, where I've just got to clean that stuff up. So if you get it clean here, that's good. The other thing I can do with my brush, so I can come along and do a bit of texturing to this. Now this, if you look at Battlefield Accessories Basic Mix, which is a sand-based kind of compound, if I stipple it with the brush, it'll actually hold that shape. Whereas this stuff tends to, once it's kind of on the surface, the moisture kind of comes to the top and it'll kind of smooth a little bit, right? But there's nothing to say that you couldn't come back after this is dried, right, and do a bit more stippling on the top, or add some sand on, or you're going to flock over the top of it anyway, so it probably doesn't matter. So I'm just using the brush here just to smooth out any lines of things. I'm getting closer to my final texture here, so I'm just making sure that it looks the way I want it to look. Right. And you see I'm holding the edge with my glove and I'm getting a little bit of grout on that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. In terms of this cliff piece, because I'm going to use paints and washes and things later on, I'm going to make sure that I get grout into all the nooks and crannies in here. Now, if that's a bit rough on the surface, because I've got like the bits of the grout kind of not smooth and rough on the top surface, so it's a bit thinner, that'll actually help with the effect when I'm painting it. So again, you can see the brush is actually pretty good for this work. I like the card because you can spread big amounts of material over quickly, right? But this also works quite well. Now, a couple of things. Don't use your favourite brush, because at the end I'm probably going to throw it away. Because you have lots of sand and grit right down into, all deep into the what is it, fennel of the brush, so it'll be no good. Of course, you can clean it up and use it as a terrain brush, but don't use your favourite painting brush, obviously. The other thing to watch out for is just turn the piece in your hand as you're working, right? So as you make sure that you haven't like left a great big undercut there, so it's sticking out in shiny white. Right, you're really trying to cover everything you can. Now, we did talk about in the stage with the caulking compound, you could come straight to this phase. So you could skip the caulking and come straight to this phase. It's up to you. I have been caulking. I kind of like the caulking, gives a nice surface for the grout to stick to. I found it makes it seem to dry a little bit quicker. Probably the one thing with the grout is you probably, once it's on, you probably want to leave it for 2 or 3 days. Again, follow the directions on the thing. It says you can get it wet, I think, in 4 hours, right? But I found after 4 hours, it was still, it still looked a little bit too wet for me to put paint and stuff over the top of. So in my test pieces, I left them for probably 2-3 days, and then it's pretty quick, and then you know that the material's actually dry. With this whole hill project, the most time, or the bit that takes the longest time, is the waiting in between for things to dry. But reality is that it's an investment of time, not much time, bench time in terms of actually getting your pieces done, but just wait time. But once you've done that, so spend a week getting your hills sorted out, and then you've got great hills for every game that you play from then on. Just going to do this piece with a brush just to experiment with a slightly different technique. Got some undercuts there at the front. I'm just making sure I get them filled so as I don't have a gaping hole at the front of my thing. Although, again, some clump foliage on the front of your hill covers that, and it'll probably look pretty cool too. So just final thing before I go into fast forward mode is I actually quite like leaving the surface of this a little bit rough, because I'm going to put a wash over the top of this. Once it's dry, it's going to get a wash, and so having it not super smooth gives me some things for the wash to stick to. It's also, I've got slopes in here. I'm going to have bases and figures and things climbing up those, and again, a little bit of an uneven surface gives me a little bit more friction for things to stick to, I think. Anyway, fast forward time. Okay, so I've finished, and now I'm coming back. You can see this is the first piece that we did about 10-15 minutes ago, and it's already starting to crust up. I can just have a quick look over and see I've got a bit of white coming through there, so I'm going to get rid of that. And it's actually got quite a nice rough texture, so I'm pretty happy with that piece. I can now take a moment just to look over my other pieces and decide if there's anything else that I want to touch up, because you can see I've maybe overestimated the grout supply a fraction. Okay, of course, I think that I can probably wash this brush out in water. I'm going to go and give that a try now. Okay, so I'm going to leave these dry, and we'll see you in a bit. Now, a piece of the kit that we haven't talked about yet is this plain hex. And so this plain hex is designed to give you the a flat piece on top of a hill. So example, I've got quite a large footprint hill. It doesn't just go straight up to the ridge, it goes up into some flat area. This is that flat area. I'm sure that I will have discussed this in the earlier part of the video. So what I'm going to do, now that I'm at this stage here, I don't need any caulking compound on that, but if I want it to be consistent with the rest of my set, I'm going to take my plain hex and I'm just going to give it a go over with my grout. Now, I found the best way to do the edges, you might have seen it in the video, is to work from the edges and from the center and push out towards the edges. What I'm trying to avoid is if I run along the edges, then I'll get lots of material on that actual edge, and it just means I've got cleanup to do later on. And given that we're the lazy gamers, we like to minimize the amount of post modeling cleanup we need to do. Of course, because I'm working straight on MDF, it is pretty absorbent, so it's going to take the moisture out pretty quickly. And again, if you've got a really dry grout mix, then that's going to increase the speed of that too. Right, so hopefully you can see from there I've got a really rugged texture there, so I'm just going to put it down. Just going to come along and just trying to get as many of the brush marks out of as I can. Unless, of course, you want brush marks. Say that you wanted to make a road, that you might actually run lines through it, right? So as you've got something to paint later on. But for me, no road, it's just a plain hill. So I'm just giving it a little bit of a touch up. Okay, so there's the set, right? The next part is going to be the final layering with flock and wash and that sort of stuff. So I'm going to let these dry and probably see you in 2 days. See ya. Okay, so I've let my grout dry. And so you can see I have now a piece that's got a bit of texture to it. So I'm going to come along with some Woodland Scenics Earth Undercoat. This is a great thin paint for putting washes over terrain. Got myself a little plastic container. Just going to put a few squirts of that. Just going to come along and just liberally apply. Now, depending on the sort of effect you're looking for, you might decide to put it on, like to water it down a fraction. I'll show you what this looks like in the end after it's dried. Now, a couple of places to look out for on the front leading edge. And then I like to just put a little line down that side there. when these are all butted up against each other, they should be pretty good. So not letting, you shouldn't be able to see any of this side. But depending on how good you've been with putting your plaster on and making sure everything is perfectly vertical, you might get some cracks there. So that just gives you a little insurance policy there. Right, there we have it. So here's this one. I'm just going to show you one that I did earlier. Right, so hopefully you can see a little bit of variation in there. So that's that.